Hey, Quarantined Youth Group, welcome back to another Wednesday night session where tonight we are going to be ending our series, David, the Life of a King. We are on day 1,039 of quarantine. I've got this nasty quarantine beard coming in right now. As you can see, it's pretty disgusting. I don't think I've ever had this much hair on my neck before that hasn't been trimmed. It's pretty gross, but we're in quarantine, so this is just how we get to live life now. If I don't get to see you in person, then I don't shave my face or trim my face. But I am showering, and so that's good. I'm showering and eating plenty, so I'm staying alive that way. I hope y'all are finding ways to stay busy. I hope that you are getting into the Word. I hope you are using the social distancing as a time for spiritual deepening. And if you have any family that is sick or any friends that are sick, know that we are praying for you. If you have anybody specific we can be praying for, let us know because right now it kind of feels like all we can do. Staying safe, staying healthy, and praying for those who need help. And so in any way that I can be doing that, I say it's the only thing we can be doing. It's a pretty powerful thing to be doing. And so please let us know how we can be praying for you. All right, so I told you we're going to get into David tonight, but we haven't played a game in at least a week, and so we're going to play a little game. I'll see you over there. All right, let's play a game. This is gonna be a fun game. So it's called If I Had To, but you might as well think of it as a would you rather, okay? So it's going to give you two choices and you have to choose which one you would rather do. If you're watching this on the premiere, make sure you are playing along in the chat, all right? So the first one is eat only mustard sandwiches for every meal for the next year, or keep all of your nail clippings in a jar by your bed for the next year. Okay, you have to choose one. Which one would you rather do? I'm going with the all of my nail clippings next to my bed because, I mean, if it's in a jar, it's not really messing with you. You can just stay there. It's not, that one doesn't sound that bad. That sounds way better than eating mustard sandwiches for every meal. That's disgusting. All right, which one is it for you? All right, let me know. All right, here's the next one. Would you rather, if I had to, wear the same pair of socks every day forever, or wear your underwear inside, outside, and backwards to help cut down on laundry? Okay, this is a difficult one because I have stinky socks and stinky underwear. So would I wear flip-flops? Would I still have to wear my socks? Oh goodness. All right, so I guess I'm gonna go with the underwear. Which one have you gone with? Which one did you put? That's just gross all around. Okay. All right. If I had to reuse the same square of toilet paper multiple times, some of y'all might actually be having to do that right now. I don't know. Versus shower after every bathroom break instead of using toilet paper. This is a terrible game. This is disgusting. Okay, I don't know which one of those you would rather do. I guess I could shower after every bathroom break instead of using toilet paper. This is awful. All right, awful. All right, if I had to go without internet for the foreseeable future, which would be hard right now, or use internet but YouTube, Amazon Prime, Netflix, and Disney Plus no longer exist. All right, this is an easy one for me. I'm definitely doing that far right. Using internet but no YouTube, Prime, Netflix, or Disney Plus, because I've got Hulu, so I can still watch Hulu and I can still get on Facebook and Instagram. All right, so yep, I'm going with that one. Easy for me. What's your choice? All right, another gross one. Would you, if you had to, share the same toothbrush with your entire family, or share the same bed with your entire family? All right, I'm gonna give you a couple of seconds to make this decision. I'm not giving an answer on this one because you. All right, moving on. If you had to, Christmas and birthday gifts will just be hand sanitizer and canned soup. Great quarantined presents.
versus Christmas and birthdays will no longer be celebrated with gifts. Easy one for me, no gifts. I'm not a big gift person anyway. So easy for me, no gifts. If I have to, that one. You have a decision yet? Have you written down? Have you told me? Put it in the chat. All right. If you had to, would you make some invisible friends so you don't feel so alone? Oh. Or give all of your plush toys names and talk to them like they are alive? All right, so this is, would you rather have an invisible friend that nobody can see, or invisible friends that other people can see but they're not real and you just look like a real big weirdo? You look like a weirdo either way, because teenagers aren't supposed to have imaginary friends. All right, I'm gonna just talk with my toys, because then when I get mad I can like throw them and stuff, and that would be fun. All right, you told me your answer. All right, we're going to do one more, and it's a good one. All right, if you had to, your mom cuts your hair for the next year any style she wants, or your dad cuts your hair for the next year any style he wants. So who do you want cutting your hair? Your mom or your dad? So you not only have to think about what is their skill with hair cutting, but what would their haircut preference be? All right, so I know for sure I'm going with my dad, because I think my dad would go for the simple cut and it would just be clippers all over, and I can live with that. I'd look like Andrew Appleby's next haircut. It looks great. I think I can pull that off too. I've done it before, so I'm going with my dad's haircut styling. As long as it doesn't go with his style. I would not want me to cut it into his hairstyle. All right, so I hope you had fun playing If I Had To, the great debate. We are about to get into the end of David's life, the end of David's story. So let's get into the Bible. So I know it's been at least a week. Actually, I know it's been exactly 2 weeks since we got into David. So let's do a recap, and then we're gonna get into where we're going today, where we're gonna look at a sacrifice that David makes to end a plague. All right, so David is the king of Israel, and we saw at the beginning of his life how he did everything right. He was a man after God's own heart. He followed God. He was successful in everything he did, but then he made a big mistake when he slept with Bathsheba and then had her husband murdered and then took her as his wife. It was a whole big thing. And we saw last week, 2 weeks ago, that there were some big consequences that came along with that. That Nathan came to David and said, hey, you have made this mistake. He gave him the story about the sheep, and then he turned it around on him and said, you are the man, and there's going to be these consequences that come of it. And he said, the sword is never going to leave your house, and what you did in private, others are going to do in public. But tonight we are jumping to the end of 2 Samuel, to the end of David's story. So I need to fill in the gaps with what happened since then. And I know I said a little bit of this 2 weeks ago, but let's go over it quickly, okay? So David's son Amnon rapes his daughter Tamar. Tamar's brother Absalom hates Amnon for it and hates that David didn't do anything about it. So Absalom kills Amnon. And then Absalom, in his hatred of David, decides that he would be a better king. And so he stages a coup against his father David. And David actually has to go on the run. And while David is on the run, Absalom sleeps with the concubines that David had left behind to watch over the house, saying that he is now the man of the house. He is now the king in the palace. But he ends up going to war against David and he loses. Absalom is killed. And so David comes back to Jerusalem and he is near the end of his life. And now he has a son, Adonijah. Adonijah decides he is going to be the next king of Israel. And so he decides to name himself king. The only problem was David had not said he was going to be king, and God had not said he was going to be king. And instead, David named Solomon to be the next king of Israel. And so Solomon then has Adonijah killed, as well as Joab, David's military commander, and several others who David had kind of let do whatever they wanted to do because he didn't really have the backbone to stand up to him anymore. But then on his deathbed, he said, hey, Solomon, why don't you take care of this stuff that I never took care of? And that brings us about to where we are at the end of David's life in 2 Solomon. And then we're going to back up a little bit to where David had done another wrong, and he had to do a sacrifice in order to take care of it. And so that brings us to the end of 2 Samuel. Actually, a part of that went into 1 Kings, but at the end of 2 Samuel, which is one of our last episodes of David, it's where he commits another sin and there is a penalty for it, a consequence for it. So he must give a sacrifice to God in order to have the plague that had come upon them to go away. And we're going to learn a little bit about David and about how our relationship is with God from this episode. So remember back when you were allowed to go out to eat? All right, I want you to remember back to those days and you were out to eat with your family, your dad is buying, and you were at Outback Steakhouse. And dad is buying, so you're feeling pretty good about what you're gonna get. You know, waiter comes, they say give it a minute, you know, and so you give it a minute and you're thinking, all right, do I want the 6-ounce steak? Do I want the 8-ounce steak? Do I want the porterhouse? Do I want the ribeye? Do I want the filet mignon? You know, you're running through all of it. Do I want Coke? Do I want Dr. Pepper? Do I want sweet tea? You're going through all this and the waiter comes back to order, but right before he takes your order, your dad hops in and he says, hey, y'all have just finished doing some work. He's talking to you, he's not talking to the waiter. And he says, hey, you've mowed the lawn, you've been doing babysitting, you've got your own money, so this meal is on you, not on me. Okay, all right, so all of a sudden you now have to, most likely, if you were like me when I was a teenager, you've got to completely rethink what you're going to order. Okay, I'm not paying for the upcharge for sweet potato fries anymore. I'm probably gonna get a smaller, less nice cut of steak. I might even go down to a hamburger at that point. I'm not getting the Coke to drink, I'm gonna get water to drink. And I need to make this as small as possible so that my tip can be as small as possible, so that way I can spend as little of my money as possible but still eat. That's probably what I would think most of your same experience would be too. That whenever we are paying for our own food, whenever you are paying for your own food, it changes a little bit what you are going to order. And what we know is that in order to sacrifice something, it actually takes sacrifice. That whenever something is coming from ourselves, it hurts a little bit more. And the same thing is true with God. What we're gonna see with David is David's gonna offer a sacrifice and someone's going to offer it to him for free, but David says, oh no, I could never offer God a sacrifice for free. That would be wrong, because he knows that it wouldn't be a sacrifice. But let's get into it. So we are starting in the last chapter of 2 Samuel chapter 24, and this is what verse 1 says. The Lord's anger burned against Israel again, and he stirred up David against them to say, go count the people of Israel and Judah. And we see what he means is go count the men who are of fighting age. Take a census of the army. And then in verse 10, David's conscience troubled him after he had taken a census of the troops. He said to the Lord, I have sinned greatly in what I've done. Now, Lord, please, I've been very foolish. Please take away your servant's guilt. So it says the Lord's anger burned against Israel. We don't know why. It doesn't tell us what was going on, but because this is Israel and because we have seen their history, we should probably assume it has something to do with idolatry, something to do with them not following God's laws, and something to do with them acting like the surrounding nations. And so God's anger burns against them, and so he prompts David, he leads David to take this census. Now, why exactly is this census wrong? Not exactly sure. There's probably one of two options. First, it shows that David was not trusting in God, but instead he was trusting in his own military might. That all throughout the Old Testament, especially in the time of the Judges, it never mattered who had more troops. If God was with Israel, then they won. In fact, think of the story of Gideon, where God made Gideon go down to 300 soldiers. It never mattered how many soldiers Israel had. If God was with them, they won. And so this could have been a time where David was saying, I need to know what I have to see if I can win. And it was him relying on himself and his people rather than on God. Number two, it could have also been that David did not follow the instructions of God. So you see in Exodus, God actually prescribed taking a census. God said, when you take a census of those who are of fighting age, then when you take that census, when you register them, they are to pay a tax. That they have to pay a tax as they are registered, and that will go to the Lord's house, that will go to the sanctuary. And so it's possible that David sinned by taking the census, but not having the people pay the registration fee, not having the people pay the tax. And so David was not following God's instructions. Most likely, one of those two reasons is why David messed up. He was trusting in himself, or he didn't follow God's guidelines. Either way, he knows in his heart that he has sinned, and his conscience is greatly troubled, and he cries out to God, God, take this sin away from me, please. God sends the prophet Gad to David the next morning, and Gad tells David, you have three options. You can either have 3 years of famine, you can have 3 months of your enemies chasing you, or you can have 3 days of plague. And David tells Gad, he says, look, I don't want to fall into human hands. I know God's mercies are great, so let me fall into God's hands instead of people's hands. So God sent a plague on Israel for 3 days, and during this plague, it says that 70,000 people died. And at the end of the appointed time, Gad went back to David and said, you need to go make a sacrifice at this appointed place. But Gad actually told David this after David had cried out and said, God, please stop hurting our people. It was me who sinned, so it should be me who is punished, not them. See, David didn't know that he had been stirred to do this because of God's anger against Israel. And so while, yes, he had done the sin, it was God's anger at all of Israel that was being brought out as punishment. But yet, you still see that David's heart, even in the midst of his chaos, even in the midst of his sin, David's heart is for his people, where he says, God, I am the one who has sinned. We talked about David takes responsibility. David, God, I have sinned. I should be the one who gets punished, not anybody else. So David goes where God has sent them, and this is what it says in chapter 24, verse 21. He has gone to Araunah's house, Araunah's land, to his threshing floor, and he says that Araunah said, why has my lord the king come to his servant? David replied, to buy the threshing floor from you in order to build an altar to the Lord, so the plague on the people may be halted. Araunah said to David, my lord the king may take whatever he wants and offer it. Here are the oxen for a burnt offering, and the threshing sledges and ox yokes for the wood. Your majesty, Araunah gives everything here to the king. Then he said to the king, may the Lord your God accept you. But the king answered Araunah, no, I insist on buying it from you for a price, for I will not offer to the Lord my God burnt offerings that cost me nothing. So David bought the threshing floor and the oxen for 20 ounces of silver. He built an altar to the Lord there and offered burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. Then the Lord was receptive to prayer for the land, and the plague on Israel ended. All right, I want y'all to pay attention to what I'm about to say, because I'm about to say something that's probably going to blow your mind. Sacrifice requires sacrifice. That in order for there to be a sacrifice, it has to cost something. And David understood this. He knew that, no, if God has asked me to offer a sacrifice, then I have to actually offer a sacrifice. It can't be free. It can't cost me nothing. If it costs me nothing, then I am not offering anything to God. It was just something free that I got. It is a hand-me-down gift. It is a re-gift. I would not do that to God, because God has asked for a sacrifice, so it must hurt. It must cost something. It must actually be a sacrifice. But I want you to think about what you offer to God. When you offer yourself to God, when you offer your gifts to God, when you offer your time to God, your money to God, is it a sacrifice, or is it just something that's left over, that's free, that doesn't cost you anything? You see, God has asked for our whole lives. I want you to think, Jesus said to deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Jesus said it's going to cost something. And in fact, he said, count the cost before you follow me. That it is a sacrifice, it is a cost to follow Jesus. We just celebrated Easter this past Sunday, where Jesus paid the ultimate sacrifice. And what did it cost? It cost him his life. It cost him experiencing the wrath of God. And in return, Jesus asks that we give him our everything, that we give him everything that we are, that we follow him, and that he becomes our everything. And at first it seems like a sacrifice, because it is a sacrifice, because following Jesus means there's going to be times where you lose friends, you lose a boyfriend, you lose a girlfriend, you might miss out on a promotion for a job when you get older. There's going to be all sorts of times where you are choosing Jesus over doing something else, where it costs you popularity, it costs you playing time, it costs you friends, relationships, promotions, money, time, you name it. There's going to be times where you're going to be sacrificing because you are choosing to follow Jesus over anything else. But I can tell you this and promise you this, it is worth it. It is 100% worth it to give up, to sacrifice in order to follow Jesus. That whatever we think we have now, what Jesus offers is so much better. That knowing our Creator, having a relationship with the God of the universe, following after the one who knows life, is so much better. Sacrifice requires sacrifice. Are you living for yourself, or are you living for the glory of God? Are you living for what you can do, or are you living for what God is able to do through you? Put yourself out of the way and give your whole self over to God. Thank you for being here for another session of the Quarantine Youth Group. We have finished our walk through David. If you have any questions about David or anything you want to get into further detail with, ask me in the comments. I would love to keep discussing him further. We'll start a next series next week, so be here for that. Make sure you like, subscribe, and get involved in the comments so we can keep this discussion going. Stay safe, wash your hands, and I'll see you next week.